Hey everybody, this is my T-bar tank, and it is a 40 breeder. I've had a hang on the back filter on here for a couple of years now, and it's just starting to wear out. It's starting to rattle and make noise, and it's just kind of getting on my nerves. I also want to do away with some of the hardware that's inside the tank. I know it's a little tough to tell because this tank is crowded, but I do have a big old UV sterilizer in the back that takes up a lot of space and is kind of gaudy and ugly. So the time has come. I have ordered an external canister filter. Now this is the 303B, not the 304B. This is the slightly smaller one. I do have the 304B. I have several of those actually. It's a very, very good filter. I do recommend them. So this is my first 303B. It's probably even still a little much for this tank. It's only a 40-gallon tank, but it is the smallest I could get that has the UV sterilizer. So when we're done today, I'll be able to take that big sterilizer out, and we will get that noisy, rattly hang on the back off of there, and we will have this installed. So this is not going to be an unboxing video, but we are going to do a head cam after this, and I'm going to actually assemble it and put all the pieces together. And I don't know how we're going to work out the actual install. I don't know if I'm going to do the head cam on that or just sort of a before and after. We are going to do a water change, so we'll probably get a little bit of water testing mixed in with all of this. So this is just going to be a big video all the way around. This is probably going to be one of my longer ones. So sit tight, grab yourself some refreshment, and I will be right back. All right, everybody. I got it unboxed. I got all the pieces laid out. So we're basically going to start putting it together at this point. This over here is actually the light and the sleeve that goes around to protect the light. That'll go in last. Right now we're just going to put the hoses and everything together. The hose itself doesn't matter, but your plastic assemblies are going to come in different bags. One is for the intake and one is for the outflow. And when you get to this piece, this is actually the valve that goes into the unit itself. There's one that says in and there's one that says out. It's very important that you make sure the one that says in is the one that has your pickup on it, and the one that says out is the one that has your spray bar on it. So we're going to go ahead and hook these up first. I guess it doesn't matter which direction you do it, really. It's probably a good idea to moisten these so you can really get that on there thoroughly. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the older units didn't have this valve, and you actually had to go through this every time you took the unit out of the tank. You had to actually unscrew these hoses rather than simply undoing this. So that's one hose, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You just feed it on there as far as it'll go, and then you tighten the screw down, and that locks it in place. And you really want to make sure you tighten that good and thoroughly, and that will give you a nice watertight seal. Now the important part is remembering which goes to which. So this one is for the intake, and that will be for this. Now I know this looks like a lot of complicated stuff, and it probably is, but this is where the hose is going to screw in. So this is the part that goes down into the tank. I don't need this middle section because we're not going to go very deep. We're only going into a 40 breeder. So I will take, let's see how this goes, this way. Then I will put this on. And then this piece here is actually for your surface skimmer, and that'll float and allows for the surface to skim. You can take that off if you don't want a surface skimmer on there and just leave that screwed in. You can even just take this off and keep that below the surface of the water, and it'll still draw water through. It just won't skim off the surface. And then of course you can actually adjust once you get it in the tank where you want it. So that's pretty much it for the, these are leftovers. That's pretty much it for the intake. I'll leave that off for the time being because it's going to fall apart. I'll leave that off for the time being while we do this. So let's double check. This is the in. Again, you want to get it fully over the highest point of that lip. So when you screw this down, it really presses it against it. So that's it for our intake. Now uncoiling these hoses and getting it to hang right, that's a different story. Again, that just slides back in there, so we'll leave that off for the time being. Now we get over to this side, and this is going to be our outflow. This is going to be our spray bar that goes into the tank. And this is a little more complicated. Again, we can just go ahead and screw this on, because this is where the water is going to come in. Now, once it comes into the tank, we can do a few different things with these different elbows. I don't even know how they all go together. What we're going to do is simply have it come in and go across the tank. Just like that. Now the larger units actually have more segments, so I like to have it set up so when it comes in, the first segment actually sprays sort of back and up and gives me the little bit of surface area or a surface disturbance you see on the one end, and then the rest of the bar I like spraying down and back so it goes down the glass and gives me a nice flow around. So I can adjust those later once we get them in there. These of course just rock to wherever you want to put them. So that's it. This will just now mount into that, and then we get these hooked into the tank however you want to do it for your tank. We will get to that in a little bit. This is all leftover stuff. The bulb and everything will go in next. And again, you can see the size difference between the one and the other. So these just come apart exactly the same. And in here is where all my other stuff is. So let me get this all unpacked, and this will be the next segment. We'll be right back and we will look at that, and then we'll begin doing the water change on the tank. And as the water is being changed out, we'll go ahead and start putting this filter in, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to start a new filter on an established tank already. So sit tight and wait for the next one. This one is a little different than the 304B as far as putting this light in. So I've been tinkering with it, and I think I've got it worked out. The instructions, if you ever buy one of these, are not very clear. They are clearly written by somebody for who English is not their first language. So it's a little tough with the directions sometimes. If you're wondering why the paper towel, I don't want to get any of the oils of my skin on this. I know some high intensity bulbs can actually blow out if you get the oils from your skin on them. I don't know if these bulbs do that or not, but I'm not taking the chance. I always use a paper towel or gloves or something. I just never touch bare skin to these bulbs, nor do I ever touch bare skin to the quartz tube. So this just snaps in, if I'm not mistaken, like so. Haven't tried this one yet, but I think this is pretty much how it goes in. Get it lined up right. Now this was the trickier part. I don't remember this on the 304B, but inside of this unit was this little plastic ring, and it doesn't seem to do anything other than get in the way. I think it's some sort of preventative type ring. It's supposed to be removed and discarded. It doesn't even mention it in the instructions. The instructions also say I'm supposed to screw this in clockwise, and there is no possible way to screw that in clockwise. So what I've done was removed this ring. There is a little lock screw here that slides in and out, and if you simply push this down until it's all the way in, and when you slide this over, you can see that it locks right up against it, and this will not come out now. So I think that's correct, and I'm not going to have any leakages or whatever. I really don't think this ring was necessary for anything. Again, it's not mentioned in the instructions, so we're just kind of playing this one by ear. You know how that goes with these types of instructions. So that's that. This will go like so. Can stay that way for the time being. This thing is so cute and adorable. I bought the deluxe package, so it already comes with some bio rings. I do have a few more in the other room that I'm going to add to this. The next tray is bio balls, and then the final tray in the bottom, since this is the smaller unit, it's only 3. And this is activated carbon, and I don't use that, so we're just going to go ahead and use filtration in the bottom tray, and then we will do biomedia for the rest of it. and we'll get it set up like every other filter. And then once I've got it set up and established in place, we'll go ahead and start working on the water change, and that'll be the next part of this video. So I think I've got that right, and I will certainly update you if that turns out not to be right, and if I have any issues with that in the future. Again, this is the 303B as opposed to the standard size 304B, which is for the larger tanks. This only has 3 trays rather than the 4. So let me get started on the next part, and I'll be right back. Alright, now as we're putting the filter together, I have put more batting, just regular old polyester batting, in the bottom tray. Again, this is only a 3-tray container. Here's the bio rings. It's important, I should have mentioned, these bio rings really need to be thoroughly rinsed before you use them, because they will cloud the water with a lot of really fine particulate material that you don't want in the tank. And then finally I'm going to put in the top layer, which is going to be my bio balls. And since I don't have any biofiltration established in this tank yet, instead of doing what a lot of you might have thought I was going to do, which was to scrub these out and pour the water into this tank, I'm simply going to put these sponges right in this tank. And the next time I do a water change and filter change on this tank, I will go ahead and remove these, and I will have them for use in the current filter that they just came out of. But I'm not going to be using that filter for a while, so there's no reason these biosponges can't work for me in here. They're already established, and now I've got some established biocultures in this filter. So we're going to go ahead and take the filter back over, top it off with some water, and get that all ready and up and going. You've seen how that's done, so there's no point in videoing that. The next stage will be actually getting in and doing some water change on the tank. We're going to look at the pH, etc., etc. So sit tight, and we'll be right back for the next segment. Alright everybody, here comes the part that's going to be a whole lot of no fun. Before I forget, I did figure out what that little plastic ring went to. The individual piece of plastic that sits against the bottom of the top section where the motor is, that little sleeve actually fits onto that piece of plastic that slides around the collar where the light goes down. So it is used for something, but it does need to come out of there. It must have gotten in there when it turned upside down and fell off, and therefore that's why I was confused about it. So there is a purpose for that little ring. We're moving on though. We're going to start doing the water change, so you're going to get a little look at what this tank looks like without its cover on it. I've got these 2 T5 units that get quite hot to the touch. Now in this case we have a little bit of an anomaly because my hood is broken. So this whole back section can come off completely by itself, and that's what we're actually going to do today. Rather than take this entire glass hood off, I'm just going to take this back section off once we get a little bit of water drained out of here. So in the meantime, I need to turn one of these off, simply stick it on top of the other one to get it out of the way. That gives me access to do my water change, hopefully without knocking these over. And then I will also be able to get back here and take that off, and we'll start getting that hood put back on. So once I've done that, I'll also be able to get in there and remove that UV filter, but I'm not going to do that just now because we're already doing enough disturbance to this tank today and enough disturbance to the biofiltration today that I'm leaving that filter intact, because that does have established biofiltration in it as well. So next step, we'll be starting the water change, and we'll go look at some water parameters while the tank is starting to drain, and then we'll come back and we'll start putting this filter on. So I'll be right back. Alright, here we are over at my testing station, and as you can see by my vial of nitrate test that we are due for a water change anyway. That's not terrible, but it's getting up there. I'd call that 40 parts per million. Again, I'm not going to bother showing you against the card because it never really turns out right. This is the one I find interesting. This is my tap water, and it's coming in at about 7.6, which is not unusual. It fluctuates a little, usually between 7.4 and 7.6. This is my tank, and it's coming in at 7.3 is what I'm going to call it. I don't know why this tank and my gudgeon tank both have very high pH comparatively speaking to my other tanks. My gudgeon tank is even higher than my tap water. I don't have anything in there that would buffer the pH, and it's no different than any other water I've got. But these are the 2 tanks I have where the pH is very similar to my tap, and it is on the alkaline side of neutral, so doing fairly large water changes does not have a huge shocking effect on this tank. And with the amount of nitrates I've got in there, we're going to go ahead and do about a 40% water change on there, maybe even a 50% water change on there. So let's get back over and we will start looking at what's going on with the filter. As you can see, I've added to my collection of defunct filters. That's for a 70 gallon. This is a 60 gallon. I've got a 40 gallon, another 40 gallon, another 40 gallon. There's some sponge filters I don't use anymore. I do have a couple other filters in the other room. There's an internal filter. You keep fish long enough and you have enough tanks, this stuff tends to pile up. So get used to it if you're new to the hobby and you're buying new equipment and you don't know what to do with your old equipment because it still works, but you don't know what to do with it. It's just going to pile up, or you can donate it to somebody or whatever. But let's get back to the tank and we will see what's going on with the water change. I've got it draining right now and it should be about time to get started on the next step. Everybody, the tank is still draining, but it's draining slowly, so we've got a little bit of time to work. One thing I want to point out before we go any further is it's always important to maybe plan ahead a little bit. I do have trouble with that. The valve that connects in there, the housing piece, is actually too big to fit behind my shelf. The gap is only about that wide. So what I had to do was get underneath, take all this stuff off and slide these up through, and then once we get this hooked up we'll go back down to the bottom and we can get that hooked back in. So let me try to figure out which one is which. This one should be the intake because it has the adjustable slide on it. So we will take this and we will take this. And now it is just going to be a matter of putting it in there in such a way. Well, now I'm going to get my suction cup back out. See, this is actually already in the sand in the bottom, so that is way too much for me. I actually need to take this whole middle section out completely and simply do that. So this will always be learning as I go. So we're down right next to the bottom. So we're not really going to pick up sand or anything. And my float should float just fine. Now this is always going to be a little funny and a little wobbly. Let's see if we can slide this. I hate these suction cups for aquariums. They either won't stay on and hold your stuff where you want it to save your life, or they attach to the glass as though they are molecularly bonded to it and you cannot get them off. So there was those pieces. Let's see, where's the part that goes to this? Have I lost the pieces already? Here they are. So this one is my spray bar, and I'm actually going to want this one to be on the other side of this one, if I can do it. And there goes that clip. Alright, so the spray bar will come in on this side, or will it? Alright, I can't do this because it's getting tangled up on itself, so now we resort to the step stool where we can actually get up here and see what we're doing and back. So I'm going to slide this over, and I don't really like having to pick up right in the corner. And I do need to be really careful. This edge of this glass is quite sharp right here. So the kinks and the twists in your hose is what's largely going to determine how well your spray bars and your intakes sit. So we'll see how that works for now once we get it up and running. It's not going to work great because that's in the way, so we're going to have this side squirting down as well, and then we'll see where that sits as far as if it's deep enough in the water. I do have another piece I can put on here to adjust it to a little bit greater length, but that should be it. So let me go start filling the tank back up with water, and then we will hook this up And once the tank's full, we should be able to get it up and running, and we'll see how it looks. Alright, we're going to take one final look at some water parameters before we go and have a last look at the tank. So here's the nitrates now. You can clearly see they're down in the orange. I guess that's coming out on camera. It looks orange to me. And here is the pH from after. This is our before, and that is our after. So they are similar enough to me that despite that fairly large water change, the slight difference in my tap water didn't make a huge impact on the pH in the tank, so everybody should be fine. So let's go have one last look at the tank, and I'll give you my final thoughts and what I think about the new filter so far. Alright everybody, I know that doesn't look a whole lot different, but it really is a lot different in there now. I've been trying to wait for my T-bar to come out front and center, so you got a nice pretty look at him. Unfortunately, he is sulking in the back corner because he's not happy about all this commotion in his tank, so we're just probably going to have to do without him for this final clip. There's not really much else to talk about. I didn't do anything other than the water change and the addition to the filter. I left the UV filter intact. I didn't wipe the glass down, and I did all of that in order to do as little disruption to the nitrogen cycle as possible. Taking the filter off of there was a pretty big deal to the nitrogen cycle. I do have that secondary filter in there, and I do have a lot of surface area in this tank as well, and that surface area all contains nitrifying bacteria. So with using the biosponges from the other filter, I think I'll probably be okay. But I didn't want to do any more than I had to. Now, the thing that does concern me is when I put my hand in the back. Again, the way it's rotated right now, I don't have any agitation on the surface at all, so I'm not concerned about that at the moment. But I did actually put my hand under the spray bar to feel how much water was moving, and it was very little. This right here on the surface, that agitation is from my UV sterilizer, which I left intact. So I do still have some movement directly on the surface, and then when that comes out of here, I'll be able to adjust the spray bar so that one side is facing up and the other side is facing down, as I explained before. But it really still didn't feel like it's going to move enough water for me around in this tank. I'm almost thinking I wish I'd gotten a 304B for this tank instead of the 303. Now, it is a nice little filter. It's nice and compact. I'm very happy with it so far. But I think when I remove that UV sterilizer, I'm probably going to have to put one of my old power heads back in there. I think I still have one that was for a 240 gallon per hour power head, which is nice and small, and it'll move just enough water in there that will serve my purposes. So that will probably be the next addition when I get in and do another water change and I'm ready to make some more changes. I'll probably add a little bit of a power head in there. So there you go. That was before and after. I hope you enjoyed. Hope that was helpful. Hope you subscribed. If you already subscribed, thanks. And thanks for watching this. I'll see you real soon on the next one.